Erin had 3 cards, all maxed out. Her credit score? 498. She didn't know what to fix first, but she started anyway. Week by week, payment by payment, she rebuilt herself. 14 months later, 654. But the best part? She finally sleeps at night. Money 101 Mondays. How to escape the credit card trap. Subscribe for real stories of financial freedom. It started with a red bubble on her phone. Just a notification. A harmless alert. Erin Thompson, 29, half asleep and tangled in her hoodie like a cocoon, blinked at her cracked screen. Payment declined, it read. Her Spotify subscription, $9.99. Declined. She frowned, rubbed her eyes, and tried again. Declined. The first time it happened, she assumed it was just a glitch. A weird sync error. Maybe her card expired, or she grabbed the wrong one from her wallet. She clicked into her banking app, still half asleep in bed, the glow of the screen catching the pale freckles on her cheeks. Her checking balance read, $1.14. Erin sat up. That can't be right. She'd been paid last Friday. She slid out from under the covers, tiptoed past the small kitchen in her studio apartment, and grabbed her notebook, the one she kept her budget in, or what she called a sort of budget. It was really just a list of due dates and reminders to pay Visa, maybe. Her rent check had been mailed 3 days ago. She flipped through the notebook. There it was, $870 to Sterling Apartments, mailed Tuesday. She was supposed to have had enough. She opened her credit card app. Capital One, $3,828/$3,850. Chase Freedom, $5,211/$5,200. Over limit. Apple Card, $1,331/$1,400. Okay, she whispered. Her breath was shallow now, heartbeat beginning its rise. She felt it in her fingers, the jittery panic that came before real problems. The kind that whispered, "You screwed up again." She had one emergency card left, or she thought she did. She opened the app for her Discover card, an old one she hadn't used in months. Closed due to inactivity. That's when the glitch became real. Erin wasn't irresponsible. Not in the way people on TikTok said it. Shopping bags and iced lattes, and treat yourself. Her debt wasn't Chanel or Cancun. It was grad school textbooks she never finished using. It was $28.47 from Walgreens when her asthma inhaler ran out. It was 7 separate $100 emergency, I'll pay it back next week, charges that turned into a mountain of interest. And yet, she never thought she'd lose control like this. She paced the room, hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands, as if they could shield her from the cold facts. Rent check equals gone. Account equals empty. Spotify equals blocked. Phone bill equals autopay in 24 hours. There was nothing else to squeeze. Then came the moment she'd always dreaded. The knock. Not a loud one. Just 3 soft taps from downstairs. Her neighbor, Charlie, let her know. The leasing office had left a notice. He handed it to her through the mail slot. Return check notice. Please remit payment within 72 hours or risk late penalties and lease action. No smile. No jokes. Just facts. She folded the paper and walked back to her bed. Sat on it like a kid about to get grounded. There were no more excuses. Erin had a college degree. She had a job. Not a great one, but steady-ish freelance work doing digital copy editing. It paid sporadically. Some months were flush. Others, drier than burnt toast. She never really tracked it. She just guessed. And hoped. Hope had run out. That night, she sat in silence. No TV. No Spotify. Just the hum of the fridge and the flicker of guilt. She pulled out an old spiral notebook and turned to the back. Drew a line down the middle. In out. She started with IN. Client. Draft hound. $600 due end of month. Side project. Tutoring gig. $240 pending. Checking balance. $1.14. Venmo. $3. A forgotten tip from a friend. Total. $844.14. She paused. Now out. Rent. $870. Already bounced. Minimum Visa payment. $129. Phone bill. $85. Groceries. Transit card refill. $25. Internet. $40. Subscription services. $58 auto. She stopped writing. The math was impossible. It wasn't even a puzzle. It was a joke. Her hand trembled slightly as she wrote 3 words in capital letters across the top of the page. I need help. But she didn't say it out loud. She didn't text anyone. Erin had always been the figure-it-out girl. She prided herself on it. Fix the printer. Fill the spreadsheet. Smile and nod. Laugh at memes. Answer emails at 11:47 p.m. with chip crumbs on her hoodie. She thought being figured out was the same as being fine. It wasn't. The next morning, she made coffee with the last scoop she had, watered it down, and opened her laptop. The first step wasn't a spreadsheet. It was Google. She typed, "How do I fix my credit? Credit cards maxed out, no money, what do I do? How to talk to debt collectors without crying. Budgeting when broke, AF Reddit." She clicked. Reddit. r/personal finance. r/poverty finance. r/frugal. r/an app. People like her. Too many. They weren't stupid. They weren't lazy. They were tired. Overdrawn. Overextended. Just like her. There were charts. Tips. Snowball method versus avalanche. People with spreadsheets, so clean they looked like museum pieces. Others had emotional breakdowns in the comments. People got angry. People got inspired. Some left replies that felt like hugs. She bookmarked 22 posts in 15 minutes. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel alone. By noon, Erin had made 3 decisions. She would call her landlord and admit the check bounced. She would pause all subscriptions. She would write down every debt she owed, no matter how ugly. Calling the landlord was awful, but she did it. Her voice cracked, her hands shook, but she explained everything. To her surprise, they didn't yell. The woman just sighed and said, "Get us a cashier's check before Friday. That's all we need." A lifeline. She canceled Spotify, Netflix, HBO, even the budgeting app she meant to use but never did. Total savings, $58 per month. Then came the debt spreadsheet. It wasn't pretty. Capital One, $3,828, 22.99% APR. Chase Freedom, $5,211, 25.4% APR, over limit fee, $39. Apple Card, $1,331, 23.99% APR. Dental financing, $613, no promo left. Emergency payday loan, $400 at 191% APR. She hated admitting this one. Total debt, $11,383. And income this month, maybe $840 if everyone paid on time. She stared at the numbers like they were a crime scene. Because they were. But this time, she wasn't the victim. She was the witness. And maybe, finally, the investigator. By nightfall, Erin had printed her debt sheet and pinned it to her fridge. Not out of shame, but as a battle plan. She pulled out her notebook again. New page. Things I can control. When I spend. What I track. How I respond. My attitude. My plan. She drew a tiny sword next to the word plan. And then, she smiled. It was a tired smile. But it wasn't fake. The screen blinked. Erin's cursor hovered over an empty cell in Google Sheets, the blinking bar like a heartbeat she couldn't calm. Row 1. Column A blank. Judgmental. Unforgiving. She took a deep breath. The silence in her apartment was thick. No music. No background YouTube chatter. Just the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the radiator kicking in. Her laptop, a battered hand-me-down MacBook covered in outdated stickers, support local zines, don't tell me to smile, and one with a possum holding a coffee mug, sat on the kitchen counter like a courtroom judge. Erin wasn't a spreadsheet person. She was a sticky note person, a napkin math person, I'll remember it later person. But now, later had arrived. It wasn't waiting anymore. She titled the sheet, Erin's Real Budget. Start here. Not cute. Not color-coded. Not bullet journal aesthetic. Just real. She started by listing her debts. She copied each one from the paper she'd pinned to her fridge, her hand scribbling a new header. Creditor, balance, interest, minimum, due date. Chase Freedom, $5,211, 25.4%, $180, 14th. Capital One, $3,828, 22.99%, $129, 22nd. Apple Card, $1,331, 23.99%, $47 fifth. Dental loan, $613, 17%, $35 eighth. Payday loan, $400, 191%, $112 third. Total minimums, $503 per month. Erin stared at the number. Her breath hitched. That was more than half of what she made in a good month. And she'd never seen it all totaled in one place before. It had always been fragmented. Little hits, little panic attacks, little, I'll deal with that tomorrow. But now it stared at her, quiet and undeniable. The first feeling wasn't despair. It was clarity. It hurt, but it was also a kind of freedom, like finally turning on the light in a messy room. The mess was still there, but now she could see it. Next, she added a second tab. Income. She typed in her freelance gigs, tiny line items that barely made a blip. Draft Hound editing, $600, invoiced. Super Tutor LLC, $240, due this week. Referral bonus, $25. Venmo leftover, $3. Bank balance, $1.14. Total available cash, $869.14. It was just short of her rent check that had already bounced. She created a new cell, bolded it, and labeled it. Mission, catch up before Friday. She opened a third tab. Expenses. This was the part that scared her. She'd never really tracked where the money went. Her checking account was a blur of Target, CVS, DoorDash, Apple, and the occasional Venmo labeled pizza or sorry LOL. Now, she had a guess. Based on memory. Based on shame. She wrote what she could. Rent, $870. Phone, $85. Internet, $40. Food, $200 average. Transport, $25. Subscriptions, $0. Canceled yesterday. Credit minimums, $503. Total, $1,723. Income, $869. Gap, minus $854. Erin leaned back in her chair and stared at the number. A breath escaped her lips. Not quite a sigh. Not quite a whimper. Then, from the side of the counter, her cat, Olive, jumped up and nuzzled her arm. Erin smiled weakly. I know, she whispered. We're boned. But instead of closing the laptop, she kept going. Because now the fear wasn't in not knowing. It was in knowing and doing nothing. So she created one more tab. The plan. In all caps. Bold. Red. She spent the next 2 hours watching videos on YouTube. One from a woman named Debt-Free Millennial, who used the debt avalanche method, paying off the highest interest cards first. Another from a guy who used Debt Snowball, targeting the smallest balances for emotional momentum. Erin liked both, but she knew herself. Momentum mattered. She needed wins. She chose Snowball. She rearranged her debts in a new table. Payday loan, $400. Dental, $613. Apple Card, $1,331. Capital One, $3,828. Chase, $5,211. She created a new row under each one labeled Goal Payoff Date, _____________, Actual Payoff Date, ________________. Erin didn't know the answers yet, but even writing the question made her feel like a person again. Around 3 p.m., her phone buzzed. A client payment hit her account early. $600, Draft Hound editing. She gasped. The timing was unreal. She immediately opened her bank app, transferred $100 to savings. Not much, but symbolic. Then she got dressed, for real clothes this time, not the hoodie/yoga pant hybrid she'd lived in for 3 days, and headed to the bank. She got a cashier's check for $870. And for the first time in her life, she handed rent over early. The leasing manager raised her eyebrows. You're Erin? Yep. Okay, she said slowly, taking the envelope. We were going to start the late fee process tomorrow. Erin just smiled and walked away. That night, she ate canned soup and crackers, lit a candle for no reason, and stared at her spreadsheet, not like it was punishment, but like it was a map. Her map. Her first real plan. At 11:02 p.m., she added a quote to the top corner of the spreadsheet. A sticky note in cell Z1. You're not bad with money. You were never taught how to breathe in it. Unknown. Then she clicked File, Save As. Escape Plan, Erin. Closed the lid. And slept, for the first time in days, with a notebook on her pillow and a weird little sense of peace forming behind the anxiety. Because she was no longer guessing. She was tracking. And that was the first win. The first time Erin made all her minimum payments in 1 month, she felt like she'd just survived a war no one else could see. There were no fireworks. No applause. Just a quiet little thank you from a faceless Chase auto reply and an even quieter bank balance blinking back at her. $19.67. It had taken every penny she could scrap together. She canceled dinner plans. Returned a pair of boots she'd splurged on last winter and hadn't even worn. She stopped ordering groceries online and started walking to the discount market with a canvas tote and a calculator. Every transaction felt like defusing a bomb. $1.99 here. $3.84 there. She'd never noticed how many ways she'd bled money before. Not the obvious stuff, the rent, the credit cards, but the frictionless spending. It's just $5 death spiral. The I'll pay it back later fantasy she'd lived in for years. Now she was wide awake, and it was exhausting. Week 1 of her new plan was all about survival. Not some motivational quote kind of survival, but actual, gritty, let's make this dollar stretch survival. She started using an app called Every Dollar. Tried YNB. Didn't stick with them. Too complicated. She went back to Google Sheets. Back to the notebook. Pen. Paper. Tangibility. It made the stress feel real, but manageable. She renamed her file. Erin's Budget. War Mode. It wasn't about crushing debt yet. It was about staying 1 inch ahead of chaos. Minimums. That was the rule. If she could hit the minimums, she could stop the bleeding. She created a countdown. Chase Freedom. $180. Due in 6 days. Capital One. $129. Due in 13 days. Apple Card. $47. Due in 2 days. Dental. $35. Due in 4 days. Payday Loan. $112. Due in 3 days. She made a checklist on her fridge. A column of excess. Every time she paid one, she drew a thick red line through it and wrote the date. It felt ridiculous. And then it felt amazing. But it was far from easy. The first real test came on a Tuesday. She got an email from her best friend, Elisa. A birthday dinner. At a new Korean barbecue place. Group setting. $42 per person, plus drinks. For a moment, Erin stared at the invite like it was written in code. $42. She had it. Technically. But she also had 3 bills due within 72 hours. The old Erin wouldn't have even hesitated. She'd swipe a card. Hide the damage. Smile through the guilt and Venmo the money from a card that was already maxed. But the new Erin? She texted Elisa. Hey, I'm skipping this one. Tight month. Let's do a coffee catch-up soon. She hovered before hitting send. But she did it. And the world didn't end. Instead, something strange happened. Elisa texted back. Totally get it. Honestly, I'm tight too. Let's do budget coffee date. Our new tradition. Budget coffee date. Those 3 words sat with Erin like a hug. She realized she'd spent years pretending she was fine. And maybe all her friends had been doing the same. That Friday, her Apple Card auto payment cleared. She exhaled so hard her cat Olive startled and knocked over a pen. Erin laughed out loud for the first time in days. She texted herself. Apple Card equals paid, white heavy checkmark. February 2nd, 25. She put in her journal. Not just the fact of it, but the feeling. She was tired. She was poor. But she was in control. The next payment due was the payday loan. The ugliest one. The one with 191% interest. The one she'd taken out in a panic after a late freelance payment threw off her rent last December. She hated that debt more than anything. It represented desperation, disorganization, shame. But now, she faced it like a soldier. She scraped together $112. Canceled her grocery delivery again. Walked to the store in the snow. Bought store-brand beans and rice, chicken thighs on sale, and a bruised bell pepper for 58 cents. Total, $21.84. She made it work. The payment cleared. She watched it process in real time, like a ritual, and she marked another red X. 3 down, 2 to go. Her body was tense all the time. Shoulders up, jaw locked, teeth sore from unconscious grinding at night. But beneath that tension, something was happening. Discipline. Not the kind you post on Instagram. Not the gym rat, hustle life, get rich aesthetic. But the slow, painful, internal rewiring that happens when you finally admit you've been doing it wrong. And start doing it different. Midway through the month, her next client invoice came in. $240. Not much, but it was right on time. She put $129 toward Capital One. Red X, victory. The last one left. Chase. Her biggest. Her nemesis. $180 due in 6 days. She called them. Told the truth. Look, I'm making payments, but I can't do $180 right now. Can I split it? Half now, half next week. The rep sighed. You've been late 4 months in a row, she said. I know, Erin said. I'm fixing that. I'm working on it. Pause. Then, okay, I'll approve a split. But you must call next week and make the second half. Erin promised. And this time, she meant it. She made the first $90 payment. Drew half an X. It was the pettiest thing in the world. But she loved it. That half X kept her going. The next morning, Erin looked at her spreadsheet. Debt balance hadn't changed much. Still over $11,000. But for the first time ever, nothing was late. That was new. And more importantly, nothing was hidden. She wasn't ignoring the problem anymore. She was confronting it. In sweatpants and slippers. With a cup of tea and a cat. But still, confronting it. At the end of the month, she sat down and made a journal entry. I made every minimum payment. I didn't default. I didn't hide. I didn't bail. I showed up. Even when I was scared. Even when I wanted to crawl under the covers. I made 5 payments this month. And I made one more important payment too. I paid attention. She smiled at that. Closed the notebook. And fell asleep on the couch with Olive curled up on her chest. A spreadsheet still open on her laptop. And a faint glimmer of something resembling pride glowing in her stomach. There are some debts that don't show up on your credit report. They don't have interest rates. They don't get letters in the mail. But they weigh more than any balance ever printed. Erin Thompson had started to pay her bills. Yes, but she hadn't started to pay herself back. Not yet, because she still carried something heavier than numbers. She carried shame. It hit her during a Thursday afternoon Zoom call with a client. Draft Hound, her biggest freelancing gig, was reviewing the edits she'd submitted. Erin nodded and smiled at the screen, her hair pulled back, hoodie zipped to her chin. Then someone asked, "Hey, would you be open to a bigger contract next quarter? We'd like to add you to monthly retainers." A win. A real one. But something inside her flinched. She heard herself say, "Maybe, if I can make room." Make room. She didn't even have enough income to breathe. Why say no? Because deep down, she still didn't think she deserved better. That was the emotional interest rate. That night, she journaled. I say no before they even say yes. I pretend I'm too busy when I'm actually too scared. Scared they'll find out I'm a fraud. That I have $11,000 in debt. That my fridge has condiments and shame. That I'm not together. But maybe no one is. Maybe together is a lie sold on credit. She closed the journal and sat on the floor. Let the thought hang in the air like incense. Because here's what no one tells you about debt. It's not just about money. It's about identity. Erin had grown up with 2 kinds of money lessons. Her dad, just pay the minimum and don't think about it. Her mom, never owe anyone anything. Ever. She'd grown up watching fights in grocery store parking lots. Silent dinners after bounced checks. Whispered arguments about where it all went. So she learned early, money was danger. Bills meant fear. Debt meant failure. So she avoided it. Until she couldn't anymore. When Erin first got a credit card at 22, it felt like freedom. It was a glossy Capital One card with a $500 limit. She bought a mattress. Then a haircut. Then groceries. Then one too many burritos. Paid the minimum. Nothing bad happened. Until it did. 7 years later, that card had grown into 5. And the balances had grown faster than her paycheck. But what hurt more than the numbers was the story she told herself. You're just bad with money. You're not smart enough to manage this. You should have known better. Look at everyone else. They're doing fine. She believed those lies like gospel. Until now. Now, she was confronting the fine print of her own identity. And rewriting it. One afternoon, Erin made a chart. Not a budget. Not a payment tracker. A timeline. She went back through her emails, her bank history, her journals. She wrote out. 2018. Got her first freelance client. 2019. Took out a dental loan. 2020. Lost major contract during pandemic. 2021. Opened third credit card. 2022. Defaulted once on rent. 2023. Took payday loan. 2025. Started over. She color-coded the events. Green for wins. Red for setbacks. Yellow for I tried. The page was a mosaic of struggle, but also survival. She kept working, kept trying, kept waking up, even when things felt impossible. That mattered. That same week, she had coffee with Elisa, the friend who invited her to the birthday dinner she skipped. They met at a park, brought their own drinks in reusable mugs, sat on a wooden bench with flaking paint and birds chirping overhead. Elisa said, "You doing okay?" Erin didn't dodge it. She told the truth. "I have about $11,000 in credit card debt," she said. "I've been ignoring it for years. But I'm not anymore." She waited for the judgment. But Elisa didn't blink. She sipped her coffee, then said, "I'm in 10 grand myself." They both laughed. It wasn't funny, but it was freeing. That moment cracked something open in Erin. She'd been carrying the weight like a secret scarlet letter. But everyone else had a letter too. Some hid it better. Some carried different kinds of debt. Student loans, medical bills, IRS notices. But the shame? Universal. So why was she letting it own her? That night, she added a new tab to her spreadsheet. Shame cost me. It wasn't about dollars. It was about the choices. The clients she didn't pitch to because she didn't feel legit. The side hustle she never launched because she thought people would laugh. The job she turned down because she was afraid they'd see through her. She listed them. Everyone. And beside each, she wrote, "No more." She added something new to her fridge next to the red excess. A sticky note that read, "Debt is math, not morality." Later that week, Erin got a call. An old client she hadn't heard from in a year needed copywriting help. $400 for a 3-day turnaround. "Can you take it?" they asked. She almost said no. Almost said she was too slammed. But instead she said, "Yes, I can." And she did. Delivered early. Got paid fast. $400. Straight to her payday loan. And just like that, her first debt was gone. Completely. She drew the biggest X of all and circled it in green. That night, she didn't feel rich. She didn't feel powerful. But she felt free in a way she never had. Not because of the money, but because she'd finally started paying back the debt she owed herself. She wore black when she paid it off. Not on purpose. Just an old college hoodie and leggings she hadn't washed in a week. But as she walked into the strip mall check-cashing place on Franklin Avenue, something about it felt symbolic. Erin Thompson was there to bury something. Her payday loan. $400 borrowed. $762 paid back over 5 months. Interest rates that would make your stomach turn. She didn't want to do the math anymore. She didn't want to see the receipt that proved how much it had cost her to survive. But she needed closure. Because this wasn't just a payment. It was a funeral. The payday loan office didn't even look like a place that handled money. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Posters lined the walls. "Get cash now." And no credit? No problem. A dusty rack of candy bars sat next to a plastic water cooler. It smelled like toner, rubber bands, and desperation. The woman behind the plexiglass didn't even look up at first. "Name," she said, eyes on her screen. "Erin Thompson." Typing. Pause. Click, click, click. Last payment. Card, ending in 57. Erin nodded. Her throat was tight. The woman slid a small printed receipt through the slot. "Congratulations. Your loan is closed." Erin stared at the paper. Just that. One line. Loan closed. No smile. No handshake. Not even a "have a nice day." It was like closing a tab at a bar you never wanted to be in. She stepped outside, holding the receipt like a funeral program. Cold wind hit her face. Sunlight sliced through the clouds. Her hoodie whipped against her side. She stood in the parking lot, silent. And then, she laughed. A sharp, loud, involuntary laugh. The kind that caught her off guard. The kind that felt like finally. That night, she made tea, sat on her couch, lit a single candle, and wrote in her journal, "Today I killed a monster." Quietly, while wearing $12 leggings. That loan cost me $362 more than I borrowed, and almost cost me my pride. But now it's gone, and I will never walk into that building again. She wrote, "R.I.P." and drew a tiny tombstone labeled "Loan Shark." Then she opened her laptop. Spreadsheet time. She added a new row to her Snowball tab. Status. Paid in full. March 15th, 25. Green font. Bold. Underlined twice. One down. Frugal. Next target. Her dental loan. $613 left. No interest promo had expired months ago. It ticked up by 17% each month. Just enough to sting. Not enough to scream. But now, with the payday loan gone, she had $112 a month freed up. She redirected it. That was the snowball. She saw it now. Not just in theory, but in practice. In motion. She added a countdown. Dental loan death date. May 30th, 25. 2 months. Then another funeral. She grinned. But victory had a strange side effect. Grief. Because paying it off brought up everything that led to it. That loan had come on a night when everything crashed. Late December. Rent due. A freelance payment delayed again. Her mom called needing help with a copay for medication. Erin had $18 in her account and $240 in bills about to hit. She'd panicked. Googled fast cash, no credit. The rest was history. They said she could borrow $400 today. No questions asked. She thought it was a miracle. It was a mousetrap. She'd been scared and ashamed and cornered. So she clicked, typed, signed, and started the slow bleed. She didn't talk to anyone about it at the time. She told herself she was handling it. But deep down, it fractured something. Now, as she sat in her apartment, sipping tea and staring at her spreadsheet, she realized something. Paying it off wasn't just about numbers. It was about reclaiming her narrative. The lie had been, you're the kind of person who ends up in a payday trap. The truth was, you're the kind of person who climbs out. She updated her fridge chart, drew a full green circle around the sticky note that said, payday loan, April goal. She beat the goal by 2 weeks. Erin took a selfie with it, just for her. Not to post, just to mark the moment. Then, she opened her notes app and wrote, things I can survive. Freelance droughts, late fees, declined cards, empty pantries, payday loans, shame, myself. That weekend, she celebrated. Not with brunch or shopping. With clarity. She printed out every debt she still owed. Highlighted the balances. Updated the interest rates. Then sat with it. No music. No background noise. She whispered, I am not afraid of you anymore. And that was new. The next morning, she got an email from a YouTube channel she subscribed to, The Budget Nerd. New episode, How I Paid Off $18,000 in a year on $35,000 income. She watched it with her notebook open, paused every few minutes to jot down strategies. Make your money visual. Every dollar has a job. Cash envelope system. Try it once. Budget isn't punishment. It's permission. One line hit her hardest. Every debt you pay off gives you your future back. Month by month. She wrote that one on her mirror in dry erase marker, then underlined it twice. That Monday, she found a beat-up shoe box in her closet, labeled it Freedom Box. Inside, she dropped the payday loan receipt, then added her first debt spreadsheet, crinkled and messy, a sticky note that said, I need help, a copy of the rent check that bounced, a screenshot of her old credit score, 498. She wasn't trying to dwell. She was trying to remember, because forgetfulness is how it happens. That quiet slide back into chaos. And Erin wasn't going back. Not this time. At the end of the week, she transferred $50 to her savings account. Small, but symbolic. Next to it, she renamed the savings goal, Emergency Fund, for Future Me. Then she paused, opened the Notes app, typed, Dear Future Me, you will never have to take a payday loan again. Not because the world got kinder, but because you got stronger. And that was the real win. The first time Erin transferred money into savings and didn't touch it for a whole week, she felt like she had just discovered fire. $50. It wasn't much, but it sat there, untouched by groceries, subscriptions, guilt, or panic. And that made it sacred. Because for the first time since she could remember, Erin had money that wasn't already spoken for. It wasn't a placeholder for a late bill or a temporary fix for an overdraft. It was hers, just in case. A line of defense between her and chaos. A fragile shield, but a shield nonetheless. She named the account, Oh Crap Fund. She laughed as she typed it, because that's what it was. Not some polished, adult, financial planner kind of fund. Not a rainy day fund. with a pretty pastel jar on Pinterest. It was the fund for when life inevitably went sideways. And Erin knew sideways. She was practically fluent in it. At first, she didn't trust it. She checked it every morning, logged into her bank app, and stared at the number like it was a baby bird. $50.12, thanks to auto interest. Then $75. Then $95. Each time she resisted the temptation to pull from it, a part of her rewired. The same part that used to panic at the first overdraft text. The part that flinched when she saw insufficient funds. The part that once thought credit cards were her emergency fund. Now, she was teaching herself a new truth. Cash is power. Quiet power. Her next client paid on time. $480. Instead of blowing it, she did something radical. She budgeted. She gave every dollar a name. $112 to the dental loan. $100 to groceries. $50 to the emergency fund. $20 to laundry. $30 to transportation. $10 to a fun envelope. $158 to rent buffer. The fun envelope surprised even her. She didn't want to cut out joy completely. That hadn't worked before. It always made her binge later. So she gave herself permission. Just $10. Enough for a used book and a cheap coffee. She smiled as she slid the bill into a Ziploc bag labeled Erin's Sanity. She started researching saving strategies like she used to binge Netflix, watch videos, read Reddit posts, subscribe to budgeting blogs. She learned about sinking funds, money set aside for upcoming expenses like holidays or vet bills, zero-based budgeting, giving every dollar a job, cash stuffing, physical envelopes labeled for each category, automated savings, small transfers that add up without thinking. But the most powerful thing she learned wasn't about interest rates or banking apps. It was this. Emergency funds don't just save money. They save your mental health. Because money stress wasn't just numbers. It was sleepless nights, fights with herself in the mirror, shame that lingered in the checkout line when her car declined. It was trauma stacked in receipts. Now, every dollar she saved was an act of resistance, a refusal to live in fear. One morning, Olive, her cat, knocked over a ceramic mug. It shattered. In the past, Erin would have melted down, not because of the mug, but because everything else was so fragile. But that morning, she swept it up, tossed it out, brewed new tea in a chipped backup, because she had $125 sitting in her OCRAF fund, and she didn't need to use it. Just knowing it was there changed everything. By mid-April, she had $250 saved, a quarter of the way to her first goal, $1,000. That was the magic number. The number she'd read in 100 personal finance posts. The number they said changed the game. She printed it out in big block letters and taped it above her desk. $1,000 equals breathing room. It became her mission, not a side quest, not a someday, a primary objective. And with every freelance invoice, she paid herself first, not because she was greedy, but because she was finally wise. She started noticing things she'd never noticed before. The way her stress eased when the phone buzzed, and it wasn't a collector. The way she walked differently at the grocery store, more focused, less frantic. The way she said no without guilt, and yes without fear. Money didn't make her happy, but it protected her happiness. She made a new rule. If it costs less than what's in the emergency fund, it's not an emergency. She lived by it. When her sneakers wore out, not an emergency. Wait. Budget. Plan. When Olive got a little sick and needed a vet visit. Emergency. $72. Covered. And just like that, she got to use the fund without panic. She transferred the money, went to the vet, paid the bill, walked home with Olive in her carrier and a full heart. Because she was the kind of person who had an emergency and handled it without crumbling. That night, she made a new note on her fridge. You just saved yourself. Underneath, she taped the vet receipt like a trophy. Because that's what it was. A symbol of who she was becoming. A few days later, she shared something she never thought she would. She posted on Reddit, r/personal finance. Title, paid off payday loan. Built $250 emergency fund. First time I can breathe. She didn't expect much, but the replies flooded in. Strangers saying, that's massive. Don't downplay it. You're doing what most people never start. Keep going. That $250 will be $1,000 soon. She cried, not because she needed praise, but because, for once, she wasn't alone in her effort. The internet wasn't just noise. It was community. At the end of the month, she made a new spreadsheet. Sinking funds, Erin edition, columns for vet bills, medical, car maintenance for the car she didn't own yet, birthday gifts, moving fund, future vacation called maybe someday, tiny deposits, $5 here, $10 there. But it built hope, and hope was something she hadn't felt in years. She still wasn't rich, still owed 4 figures, still wore the same hoodie 3 days a week. But her identity had shifted. She no longer felt like a drowning person gasping for air. She felt like a swimmer in choppy water, still struggling, but with direction, and strength, and breath. The phrase, multiple income streams, used to sound like something tech bros said into ring lights. But now, to Erin Thompson, it sounded like oxygen. She wasn't trying to get rich. She was just trying to make room. Room to breathe, to save, to pay her dental loan before it snowballed into another emergency. She wasn't afraid of hard work. She was afraid of instability. And she was finally tired of being afraid. The problem wasn't laziness. It was burnout. Freelance work came in waves. $800 this week, nothing the next. She'd scraped by too many times on hope and ramen. The peaks were thrilling. The valleys were paralyzing. So Erin sat down with a notebook and wrote one question at the top. What can I do for money that won't break me? She knew what she couldn't do. More full-time hours. Another debt cycle. Anything that required a fake smile and corporate small talk. But she could do a few things. So she started with what she had. She listed her assets. Not the financial kind. The actual kind. She could write. She could proofread. She was patient. She knew how to explain tech to non-tech people. She had a decent laptop. She had an internet connection and a brain that still worked, even if it trembled sometimes. From that list, she carved her first intentional side hustle. Tutoring. Not school subjects, but tools. Software. Google Docs. Grammarly. Excel. Canva. The basics people pretended to know, but struggled with in silence. She posted a simple ad on Nextdoor and Reddit. Need help with the basics? I can teach you how to build a spreadsheet, design a resume, or organize your digital life. No jargon. No judgment. $20 per hour online. Flexible. Message me. Within 24 hours, she had her first client, a retired nurse named Gloria, who wanted to learn how to make a slideshow for her church group. They met on Zoom. Erin taught. Gloria laughed. At the end of the hour, she Venmo'd $25 and said, "Keep the change." Erin nearly cried. That $25 went straight into her dental loan payoff envelope. It didn't erase the debt, but it chipped away at the belief that she was stuck. And every chip mattered. But with growth came friction. At her next coffee catch-up with Elisa, Erin mentioned her tutoring side gig. Elisa raised an eyebrow. "You're already working all the time. Aren't you burning out?" Erin sipped her coffee. Nodded. "Sometimes," she said. "But this feels different. I'm not chasing. I'm choosing." That made all the difference. But not everyone understood. Her cousin called one night to check in and asked what she'd been up to. Erin explained. "You're hustling again? Isn't that a little desperate?" Her cousin said, laughing. Erin winced. She wanted to clap back. But instead, she smiled and said, "I'd rather be desperate and doing something than waiting and doing nothing." They changed the subject. But Erin didn't forget. That night, she wrote in her journal, "Sometimes your ambition makes other people uncomfortable, especially when it reminds them of what they're not doing. Let them be uncomfortable." She drew a tiny lightning bolt next to it and got back to work. By the end of the month, she'd done. For tutoring sessions, $100. 2 rush editing jobs, $150. 1 proofreading gig from a college student on Reddit, $30. Plus her regular freelance income, $700. She made over $980 that month. It wasn't a fortune, but it was hers. She gave her budget a makeover. Her old spreadsheet was functional. Now it became art. Color-coded. Each tab labeled like a mission. Essentials. Debt Slayer. Fund. Freedom Fund. She added a new section called Work I Want versus Work I Tolerate. It was a quiet rebellion. Because burnout didn't just come from doing too much. It came from doing too much of the wrong thing. And Erin had been doing that for years. She started to dream again. Not big, ridiculous dreams. Just possible ones. A 2-week emergency fund. A debt-free birthday. Maybe a trip. even just a cheap one. Maybe the ability to say no to toxic clients. Or, wild idea, to save enough to take December off. But hustling had rules now. She made them herself. Erin's Hustle Manifesto. If it drains your soul, it costs more than it earns. Rest is part of the hustle, not the reward. Every dollar must serve a purpose. If it pays you in guilt, it's not worth it. You're allowed to say no, even to good things. She pinned the manifesto to her wall with washi tape and pride. One Sunday afternoon, she bought herself a $4 lavender candle. That was her fun money for the week. She lit it and sat down to edit a manuscript for a college senior. The work was steady. The room was quiet. The cat was purring. The candle flickered gently in the corner. For once, hustle felt holy. By mid-May, she'd added $150 to her emergency fund and put an extra $300 toward her dental loan. She was ahead of schedule. More importantly, she wasn't afraid of the next dip, because she'd built her own ladder. One quiet, awkward, unglamorous rung at a time. Erin could trace the exact moment the dental loan became more than just a number. It was the summer of 2022. She'd chipped a molar on an unpopped popcorn kernel during a late-night binge-watch session. The pain wasn't unbearable, but it was sharp. She waited a week, hoping it would settle. It didn't. By the time she made it to the low-cost dental clinic downtown, the molar was cracked, infected, and needed a root canal. The visit cost her $1,100. Insurance? She didn't have it then. They offered financing through a third-party lender, 0% interest for the first 6 months. She said yes. She didn't know the clock had already started ticking. Back then, she had every intention of paying it off quickly. She made the first 2 payments on time. Then a freelance gig fell through. Then another bill came early. Then she forgot to update her autopay. Suddenly, the promo was gone, and the interest was piling on. $35 minimum, creeping higher with every missed date. What had started as a chipped tooth became a source of financial rot. And, in a way, emotional rot too. Because every time she smiled, or tried to, she remembered what she owed. Now, sitting in her apartment 2 years later, Erin pulled up her spreadsheet. Dental loan, balance, $294.37. Just under $300. That was all that remained. But it felt bigger than her rent. Because this wasn't just about money. This was about dignity. About the day she sat in that clinic chair, pretending she wasn't crying while the nurse handed her a tissue. About the week she ate soup for every meal, not because she was broke, but because chewing hurt too much. About the smile she'd stopped showing in photos. And about the way she hated that shame had ever found a home in her body. She made tea, lit her lavender candle, closed her eyes. Then she opened her savings account. She had $365.14 in her Freedom Fund. That money had been earmarked for emergencies. But this was an emergency delayed for too long. She transferred $300 from savings, paused, stared at the confirm payment button like it was a cliff, and clicked. Just like that. The dental debt was gone. No confetti, no triumphant music, just a silent confirmation screen. But in Erin's chest, a weight dropped she didn't even know she'd been carrying. She stood, walked to the mirror, smiled, just to prove she could. Then she cried, not because she was sad, but because she'd spent 2 years treating her pain like it wasn't urgent, treating her body like it could wait, treating her dignity like a luxury. And now, she wasn't doing that anymore. That night, she wrote in her journal, "I paid for my tooth today, but what I really paid off was the idea that I don't deserve to take care of myself. My smile is not a luxury. My health is not a debt. My dignity is not optional." She underlined dignity 3 times. Then she lit a new candle, mint eucalyptus, because it was a fresh start. The next day, she created a new tab in her budget spreadsheet. Body budget. It wasn't for indulgence. It was for care. She listed annual checkup, $50, copay, vision exam, $85 out of pocket, dental cleaning, $120, therapy fund. That last one stung. Therapy had always felt out of reach. But now, maybe not. She labeled it TBD, but important, because her spreadsheet wasn't just about what she could afford. It was about what she deserved to prioritize. Later that week, Erin received a voice message from her friend Elisa. "Hey, just wanted to say I saw that budget post you made on Reddit. You're kind of killing it. Like real talk. Can we budget together sometime? I want to do this too." Erin smiled, replied with one sentence. Let's call it budget brunch. They set a date. And just like that, budgeting became less isolating, more shared, more sacred. At their meetup, Erin showed Elisa her spreadsheet, color-coded, calm, and deeply human. This, Elisa said, is like your brain on paper. It's my life on paper, Erin replied. They spent 2 hours talking money, not in a way that made them feel small or guilty, but in a way that made them feel powerful. Afterward, Erin stopped by the corner store for groceries. The cashier, same guy every week, smiled as he scanned her items. You always bring your own bags. I respect that, he said. Erin laughed. I'm on a mission. He raised an eyebrow. Good kind or bad kind? She thought about it. Debt-free kind, she said. Now that's a mission, he said, handing her the receipt. She walked home, wind in her hair, bag on her shoulder, and something new in her step. A lightness. Not because she was finished, but because she knew she was getting there. She got home, unpacked the groceries, and taped the dental loan confirmation in her fridge. Then she added one more sticky note. This one in red ink. I smile with all my teeth now. And then, she did. It started with eggs and spreadsheets. Erin didn't expect her Saturday to change much. She was tired, emotionally spent from paying off the dental loan. She'd woken up to gray skies and a stubborn headache. Normally, she'd cancel a meetup like this, blame it on work, or just need a day. But not this time, because Elisa was waiting. And this wasn't just brunch. It was a pact. They met at Erin's apartment. She'd pushed aside her piles of sticky notes, cleared space on the kitchen table, and made scrambled eggs with whatever was left in the fridge, some spinach, a single sad tomato, half a block of cheese. Elisa brought day-old croissants and oat milk for coffee. Together, they sat, ate, and opened their laptops. Okay, Elisa said, tapping her keyboard. Be gentle. I haven't looked at my bank account in 2 weeks. Erin smiled. This is a judgment-free spreadsheet zone. She meant it, because she knew what it felt like to open your bank app and flinch, to avoid looking at the damage, to pretend it wasn't as bad as it was, to feel like your money mess made you a bad person. So she gave Elisa the same thing she'd finally learned to give herself. Grace. They started with the basics. What's your income? Elisa laughed. Right now? Just my job. $2,400 a month. Fixed. Yeah. Marketing assistant. It's tight. Okay. Let's break it down. Rent. Car payment. Groceries. Credit card minimums. Subscriptions. The usual suspects. By the time they finished, Elisa leaned back and stared at the sheet. I'm $160 in the red every month, she said, voice flat. Erin didn't flinch. That's information, not a verdict. But it's bad, Elisa said. No, Erin said gently. It's just real. And now that you know, you can change it. For the next 2 hours, they tweaked. Canceled 2 forgotten subscriptions. Downgraded a phone plan. Created a fun money line so Elisa didn't crash and burn from restriction. Built in a $20 buffer. Shifted credit card minimums around to see which payments freed up the most space. By the end of the session, they had something that resembled a real budget. Not perfect, but livable. And that was enough. Elisa looked at the screen. I feel like I can breathe. A little. That's the goal, Erin said, sipping her coffee. Not to get rich overnight, just to stop the bleeding. Then Elisa asked something that caught Erin off guard. How'd you learn all this? Erin paused. She wanted to say, I read a lot. But the truth was messy, eh? So she told it. I overdraft 7 times in 1 month. Had a rent check bounce. Took a payday loan. Almost defaulted on 2 credit cards. Then I finally sat down and faced it all. Started tracking. 1 payment at a time. 1 spreadsheet at a time. Elisa blinked. Damn. Yeah. Erin said, laughing a little. Not glamorous. Just survival. They clink coffee mugs like champagne flutes. To survival. After brunch, Elisa asked to see Erin's full budget. So Erin opened it. Hesitant at first, but then proud. Because it wasn't just numbers anymore. It was a story. Her story. Color-coded, structured, and still in progress. And seeing it reflected back through someone else's eyes gave it new weight. Elisa pointed at one section. Emergency fund, $200 in green. You really save that much? Erin nodded. Yeah, and I only used it once. For Olive's vet visit. Elisa looked thoughtful. I've never had a savings account that didn't get emptied every month. Erin smiled. Then let's start yours today. They opened a new account together on Elisa's phone. Labeled it Peace of Mind. They laughed. It's more poetic than Oh Crap Fund, Erin said. Mine's gonna have pastel vibes, Elisa replied. Later, after Elisa left, Erin sat at the same kitchen table in silence. Something had shifted, because today, for the first time, she hadn't just managed her money. She'd helped someone else manage theirs. She'd passed the torch, and in doing so, strengthened her own flame. That night, Erin wrote in her journal, "Helping Elisa reminded me that I know what I'm doing. Not because I'm perfect, but because I stayed. I stayed in the spreadsheet. I stayed in the discomfort. I stayed when it felt hopeless. I don't need a finance degree. I just need to remember that lived experience is wisdom too." She doodled a little cartoon of herself wearing a graduation cap made of receipts. Laughed, then closed the journal. The next morning, Erin woke up to a text from Elisa. "I checked my budget before buying coffee today. Didn't order food. Felt like a damn adult." Erin grinned, then texted back, "Welcome to the brunch pact. We do hard things and eat croissants after." She added a new sticky note to her fridge. Budgeting is a love language. Because it wasn't about the numbers. It was about showing up for yourself and for the people you care about. About refusing to let shame isolate you. About choosing clarity over chaos. About croissants and courage. Later that week, she created a new file. Budget Brunch Guide for Beginners. She didn't share it yet, but she filled the first page with lessons. Start where you are. No number is too small to matter. You're not broken. You're just untracked. Budget with someone who won't flinch. Celebrate the boring wins. They're the ones that last. It wasn't a course. It wasn't a business. It was just Erin, building the manual she wished she'd had. Because sometimes, healing your own story means helping someone else write theirs. There it was. 4 digits. No decimal. No parentheses. Just a clean, whole number. $1,000. Erin Thompson stared at her emergency fund balance and didn't blink. Her fingers hovered above the trackpad like she was afraid to touch it, as if acknowledging it too quickly would scare it away. But it was real. She checked 3 times. Bank app, spreadsheet, savings account. All of them said the same thing. $1,000. The number she had chased, whispered about, fantasized over, failed at, restarted for, cried over. It was here. It hadn't come from one lucky windfall. It came from small, forgettable acts. The $10 she didn't spend on takeout. The $30 refund she didn't waste. The tutoring gig that turned into 3. The groceries bought on sale instead of instinct. The dozens of moments where she said no, not to joy, but to mindless spending. One moment didn't build that $1,000. Discipline did. Tiny, unsexy, uninstagrammable discipline. And now, that discipline had a dollar sign. She sat back in her chair, hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands, staring at the screen. For months, she told herself the first $1,000 was everything. Safety, stability, success. Now that it was here, it didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like silence. A good kind. The kind that settles in your bones. She made tea. The expensive kind this time. She could afford it. She lit her eucalyptus candle, turned off her notifications, and wrote in her journal, "I've never had this much money sitting in an account without guilt. This is the first time I've ever felt like the ground beneath me isn't about to collapse. $1,000 doesn't make me rich, but makes me ready." She underlined that last word twice. Then, she created a new rule, written in thick black ink at the top of her budget. The first $1,000 is sacred. It wasn't for fun, not for upgrades, not for treating herself. It was a wall between her and panic, a space for peace to grow. And strangely, reaching the milestone didn't make her want to spend more. It made her want to protect more, because now she had something to lose. But more importantly, she had something to build on. That week, she walked into her favorite bookstore for the first time in months. She browsed slowly, eyes trailing across hardcovers she used to buy impulsively. She picked up one, a memoir from a financial therapist she'd heard on a podcast. Money isn't just math, it's memory. The price tag read $22. She thought about it, held it in her hands, and gently put it back. Not because she couldn't afford it, but because she could wait. The library had a copy on hold. That was a new kind of power. Erin started thinking in long timelines now. Not just, can I make rent this month? But, where do I want to be in a year? She started playing with numbers. What if she added $100 per month to her fund? What if she kept her expenses low? What if she finished paying off Capital One by October? For the first time ever, she allowed herself to forecast. Not like a dreamer, but like a strategist. At her next budget brunch with Elisa, they high-fived over oat milk lattes. You hit 1,000. Elisa said, eyes wide. Erin nodded. Dude, you're officially recession-proof. Maybe stub-your-toe-proof. Erin joked. They laughed. But deep down, she knew it was true. She wasn't ready for everything. But she was no longer vulnerable to anything. After brunch, Erin walked home in the spring sun. The air felt different. Not just warmer, but clearer. Like the weight of every unpaid bill, every bounced check, every overdraft email had finally lifted. And what remained was herself. Not the broke, anxious version, but the version that stayed. Who learned. Who clawed her way to $1,000, one odd job at a time. She got home and did something she never thought she'd do. She printed out the savings balance. Just the number, $1,000. She taped it to her fridge under all the other sticky notes and spreadsheets. But this one wasn't a goal. It was an arrival. And above it, she wrote in red Sharpie, evidence. That night, she posted again on Reddit. r/personal finance. Title, hit $1,000 emergency fund after 5 months of tracking. It feels like freedom. She shared what she'd done. No hacks. No windfalls. Just grit. The replies poured in. People congratulating her. Asking how she'd done it. One comment read, you don't realize how important the first $1,000 is until you feel what life is like without it. Another said, this is why I started my fund. I needed to believe it was possible. You just reminded me it is. She upvoted everyone. Not for the attention, but because she remembered being on the other side. The girl who thought she'd never get ahead. And now, she was ahead. Not far. Not fast. But forward. She added a new quote to her fridge that night. You don't have to be rich to feel safe. You just have to be ready. She stared at it, then whispered, I'm ready, and smiled. The email subject line read, your free credit score update is ready. Erin stared at it for a long time. She didn't open it. Not yet. Because that number, it wasn't just a number. It was a judgment, a memory, a measurement of all her worst moments captured in 3 digits. She'd ignored it for years. Deleted the emails, dodged the pop-ups, told herself that as long as she was paying her rent and avoiding collectors, the score didn't matter. But it did, especially now, because Erin wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building, and building meant facing the ruins. She made a cup of tea first, mint and honey, her ritual for courage. Then she opened the email. Her heart thudded. Loading. Your credit score, 541. Erin stared. The last time she checked, it was 498. Now, months later, 541. Not good, but not nothing. Progress. She looked at the breakdown. Late payments. High utilization. Age of accounts. Derogatory marks. A graveyard of decisions she couldn't undo. But the biggest factor? Credit card usage. 94%. She winced. The balances were still too high. Even though she'd made the minimums. Even though she hadn't missed a payment in months, the damage was there. Still, no new late payments. That was something. And for the first time in years, her report didn't feel like an indictment. It felt like a project. She opened her notebook and wrote at the top of a clean page, how to fix this without losing my mind. She started a list. Don't miss any more due dates. Get balances below 30% one by one. Ask for credit limit increases. Carefully. Keep old accounts open. Don't open new cards yet. Track everything. Forgive myself. That last one, hardest of all. She opened a new Google sheet. Named it Credit Comeback. She listed her cards. Card balance limit utilization, due date, APR status. Chase Freedom, $5,211, $5,200, 100%, 1425.4% over limit. Capital One, $3,571, $3,850, 92.7%, 22nd, 22.9% active. Apple Card, $947, $1,400, 67.6%, fifth, 23.9% active. She added color-coded boxes. Red for over-limit, orange for 70% plus, yellow for 50%, green for under 30%. Everything was red and orange. But that would change. Slowly. $1 at a time. That afternoon, Erin called Capital One. After 20 minutes of hold music, a rep answered. "Hi," she said. "I'm working on improving my credit, and I'd like to ask about a credit limit increase. I haven't missed a payment in 5 months." The rep reviewed her account. "Well, you're eligible to request a $500 increase. No hard inquiry needed. Want to try?" Erin's palms were sweaty, but she said, "Yes." A pause. Then, "Approved. Your new limit is $4,350. She thanked them, hung up, then screamed, just a little, alone, in her kitchen, because that $500 bumped her utilization from 92% to 82%. Still bad, but better. And most importantly, it gave her breathing room. She added the new limit to her sheet. Watched the red box fade to a duller shade. Progress. Tiny, but real. She made a plan. She couldn't pay off Chase yet. It was the highest balance. But she could focus on the Apple Card next. $947 out of $1,400. If she knocked it below $420, that would put it under 30%. And that would turn the orange box green. She circled the number. Underlined it. Goal. Apple Card, $419 by August 1st. That night, she posted on Reddit again. Title. Check my credit score after avoiding it for 2 years. It's not good, but it's better. The responses were kind. Supportive. A few had advice. Others just said, "Proud of you." That meant more than she expected, because every reply felt like a hand on her shoulder. A reminder that she wasn't rebuilding in a vacuum. The next day, she journaled. Credit isn't just about cards. It's about trust. Banks don't trust me yet, but I'm learning to trust myself. She paused, then added, I don't need a perfect score to feel proud. I just need a better story. Later that week, she got a surprise. A freelance client offered her a rush project, $350 for 24-hour turnaround. It was a lot, but she said yes. Pulled an all-nighter with Olive sleeping beside her and her lavender candle burning low. She submitted the project on time. They paid instantly. And Erin, she transferred $300 straight to Apple. The next day, her balance read $647. Still not under 30%. But now, only $228 to go. She added a note to her fridge. Apple Card under 30% equals August 1st. Below it, a little countdown. 35 days. She set a recurring calendar reminder. Check credit score monthly. Celebrate every digit. Because now, the score wasn't a monster. It was a mirror, and mirrors reflect growth, even when it's slow. At her next budget brunch, Elisa asked, "Want to do a credit check-in together?" Erin hesitated, then said, "Only if we make it a drinking game." They laughed, but they did it, together. And when Elisa's score turned out to be lower than she hoped, Erin didn't judge. She said, 541 to 647. I'm living proof it moves. They toasted over coffee. To numbers. To effort. To grace. That night, Erin printed a new slip of paper. It didn't say paid off. It didn't say approved. It just said, credit score, 541, 572. Projected next update. She taped it to the side of her fridge. Not for the number, but for the direction. And next to it, she wrote, northbound. Slowly. Faithfully. Unapologetically. There was no confetti. No fireworks. No surprise phone call. No inspirational soundtrack. Just a single click. A quiet breath. And the balance on her Apple Card dropped below 30%. $417.89. That was the number. She had circled it on her fridge. Written it in her journal. Whispered it to herself like a mantra. Get it under 420. Just once. Just this one time. Because she knew what that number meant. It wasn't just a payment. It was proof. Proof that she could do what she said she would do. Proof that discipline was not a phase. That budgeting wasn't a punishment. That she could show up again and again until it added up to something real. It had taken 3 months. Not of perfection, but of consistency. She took every side job she could. tutored 2 high school seniors on how to use Google Docs, edited an 80-page grad thesis for a guy who paid her in 2 installments, returned a pair of shoes she'd convinced herself she needed, skipped takeout, walked instead of paying for ride shares, said no to a weekend trip she couldn't afford, not even just the Airbnb split part. Each time, she put the savings into her Apple Card, not because she wanted to be debt-free in a single leap, but because she wanted to trust herself in the small moments. And now, her trust was paying interest. The good kind. Erin logged into the car dashboard just to see the green progress bar. Utilization, 29.9%. She grinned. That single-digit change, from 30.1 to 29.9, meant something real to the credit bureaus. It also meant something real to her nervous system, because for the first time in years, she had a credit card that was not screaming. She opened her spreadsheet and highlighted the line. Apple Card, $417.89, $1,400, 29.9%, white heavy checkmark, goal met. Then she updated the box color, from orange to green. She stared at it, let it soak in, because in her world, that green box meant relief. She brewed a cup of her favorite tea, turned off her phone, and sat in silence with a sticky note and Sharpie. She wrote, "This is what progress looks like, 1% at a time," then taped it right under the Apple Card section of her fridge. It wasn't glamorous, but that was the point, because most victories in personal finance aren't loud. They're made of sacrifice and silence. They're earned in grocery store aisles and late-night budgeting sessions, in resisting clickbait sales, and canceling and used subscriptions. Erin's one didn't trend. It didn't glow, but it was foundational, and that made it unshakable. The next day, she checked her credit score again. It hadn't updated yet, but she wasn't looking for validation this time. She was looking for rhythm, and she had it now. At budget brunch, Elisa asked, "So what's next?" Erin shrugged, sipping coffee. "Probably tackle Capital One. That one's almost at 80%. I want to get it under 50. Elisa blinked. "You're going to bring down $3,500. Erin smiled. "Not overnight, but one payment at a time. Same way I did this." Elisa leaned back, nodding. "I swear you're like the quietest financial ninja I've ever met." They laughed, but Erin held that phrase close, because that's exactly how she felt now. Not loud, not flashy, but precise, intentional, and getting stronger. That night, she added a new section to her journal. What it took to get Apple Card under 30%, 7 tutoring sessions, 3 freelance edits, 1 refunded return, for skip takeouts, 3 fun envelopes redirected, dozens of micro decisions. She listed them all, because she didn't want to forget. The small choices were the bricks in the wall she was finally building between herself and financial chaos. She didn't announce the milestone online this time. She didn't need to. This one was just for her. She celebrated by doing something simple. She slept, with the windows open, the sound of the city humming in the background, and her heart finally not racing when she thought about bills. The next week, a client asked if she was available for a bigger project. It would take time, focus, a weekend of her life, but it paid $800. She said yes, not out of desperation, but out of choice, because now, her work wasn't going toward a black hole. It was going toward momentum. She made a new plan. Capital One, 50% by October 15th. She broke it into chunks. August goal, down to $3,100. September, $2,700. October, $2,100. Achievable? Maybe. But the goal wasn't perfection. It was movement. She updated her fridge with a fresh sticky note. Chase the feeling, not the number. And she knew what that meant now. Not chasing 800 credit score dreams or $1 million TikTok paydays, but the feeling of agency, of checking your account without dread, of knowing you made that number move on purpose. Later that week, Erin got a text from her old college roommate. "Hey, I saw your Reddit post a while back. I've been trying to get out of credit card debt too. Can I ask how you stayed motivated?" She paused before replying, because the truth was, she didn't always feel motivated. She just kept going. Anyway, she typed, "I stopped waiting to feel motivated. I made a plan. I stuck to it. And I let momentum do the rest." Also, spreadsheets, and sticky notes, and lavender candles. Don't underestimate the vibe. Her friend replied with a laughing emoji. But Erin wasn't joking. The vibe mattered. That night, She stood in front of her fridge, covered in notes, charts, and messy goals, and smiled. It looked chaotic, but it was actually a cathedral, built slowly, out of old shame, and new decisions, and one quiet win at a time. It happened on a Tuesday morning. No warning, no dramatic build-up, just a little notification banner that blinked across Erin's cracked phone screen as she stirred her oatmeal. Credit Karma update. Your score has changed. She froze mid-stir, spoon suspended above the pot. She wasn't ready. Or maybe she was. She'd been waiting for this moment for weeks. Quietly, anxiously. Not because the number mattered, but because what the number represented mattered. She dried her hands on a dish towel, walked to the kitchen table, opened her laptop, logged in. The page loaded. Slowly. Buffering. Then, your credit score, 601. Erin stared. Her heart didn't race this time. It softened. The last time she saw her score start with a 6, she was 24, still in school, still believing her finances were just a phase. That was before the decline, before the missed payments, before the maxed out cards and the payday loan. That number had vanished like smoke. And now, 2 years and 1,000 decisions later, it had returned. 601. The threshold between poor and fair. She was still climbing, still deep in debt, still budgeting every dollar. But something had shifted. This time, the number wasn't a badge of shame. It was evidence of effort. And effort was finally being recognized. She let herself smile, quietly. Then she opened her spreadsheet and changed the projected score. 541, 601. Underneath, she typed, 60 points. 5 months. 1 me. She didn't text anyone. She didn't post online. This moment was sacred. A soft celebration. A quiet arrival. But then something surprising happened. Instead of feeling euphoric, Erin felt off. It was like standing at the top of a hill and not knowing what to do next. For weeks, she had attached her hope to this milestone. When I hit 600, she told herself, I'll feel secure. I'll feel legitimate. But here she was, with the number, and a lingering feeling of unfinishedness. That afternoon, she journaled. I hit 600. It's not as magical as I thought it'd be. Because a score is just a snapshot, not a destination. I thought it would fix something inside me. But really, it just confirms what I already knew, that I'm showing up, even when it's hard. She paused, then added, real karma isn't the number. It's the process. Erin decided to dig deeper. She opened her credit report and reviewed every line. Past due notes. Collection accounts marked closed. Credit limits increased. Balances shifting downward. Payments made on time. Each item told a story. A hard one, but one that ended in responsibility. Not perfection, but presence. She remembered something her therapist once said during a free trial session months ago. Self-worth and net worth are 2 separate accounts. Don't overdraft one to boost the other. She'd written it down. Now, it rang louder than ever. Because even though the score had gone up, Erin had realized something crucial. You can't wait for a number to tell you who you are. You have to know already. And then you rise. She walked to her fridge and stared at all the sticky notes. They were her credit report in their own way. Apple Card under 30%. Capital One, October goal. Emergency fund equals $1,000. Budget brunch Thursday. Chase the feeling, not the number. She added one more. You were worthy when it was 498. Because that was the truth. The Erin who panicked at overdraft emails? Worthy. The Erin who canceled dinner plans and cried into lentils? Worthy. The Erin who walked into a payday loan office and still found a way out? Worthy. All of her. Not just this 601 version. Later that day, Elisa texted her. Just hit 550. It's moving. You. Erin replied. 601. OMG. Girl. You're in the 6s. You're a financial adult now. Erin laughed and texted back. Yeah. But I was already a financial adult before the system figured it out. That felt true. That felt like power. She walked to the corner store to grab milk and saw a flyer posted near the register. Free Community Financial Workshop. Rebuilding Credit 101. She took a picture. She wasn't sure if she'd go, but it felt poetic. To learn more, not from a place of shame, but curiosity. To be a student of something she was already living. That night, she opened a new doc. Titled it, Things the Credit Score Doesn't Show. And she started typing. The night I cried over a $38 overdraft. The courage it took to open my first statement in months. The way my hands shook calling Capital One to negotiate. The time I told a friend, I can't go out, I'm rebuilding. Every decision to pay myself first. Every late night spreadsheet. Every sticky note. She stared at the list and whispered, this is the real score. Before bed, she checked her bank account. Still tight, but everything was paid. Emergency fund intact. Capital One slowly decreasing. She lit her candle, curled in a bed, and felt, for the first time in years, peaceful about money. Not because she was rich, but because she had clarity. And clarity was freedom. Every budget has a final boss. For Erin Thompson, it was Capital One. The Apple Card had been hard. The payday loan had been predatory. But Capital One, that was history. 7 years of swipes. Emergencies. Delayed freelance payments. Groceries she didn't have cash for. Rent gaps she promised herself she'd catch up on next month. A dress for a job interview. A cab ride when her dad got sick. All of it had quietly added up. Now, it stared back at her like a mountain she'd built herself. Balance, $3,571.44. Limit, $4,350. Utilization, 82%. APR, 22.9%. Erin inhaled deeply. This was the big one. The kind of balance that lived in your chest, not just on your statement. She stared at her spreadsheet. She had a plan. It was clear, color-coded, and aggressive. Bring Capital One under 50% by October 15th. It was ambitious. That meant a target of roughly $2,175, which meant knocking out almost $1,400 in 3 months. It felt impossible. But then again, so had the Apple Card. So had the emergency fund. So had everything she'd already done. She knew now that impossible just meant not done yet. The first week, she made a $150 payment. Small in the grand scheme, but it chipped the balance down to $3,421. Still suffocating, but better. She highlighted the cell on her sheet and added a red arrow pointing down. Visual momentum mattered. The second week, she got hit with a rough one. A client payment was delayed. A tutoring student canceled. And Olive, her cat, knocked over her last bottle of almond extract, which, absurdly, she'd been planning to sell on a local buy-nothing swap for a $5 grocery trade. She sat on the kitchen floor for a while that night, surrounded by spilled glass and the smell of fake vanilla, just staring at the ceiling. I'm so tired, she whispered, because she was. Not of budgeting, but of how long it all took. How deeply the process asked her to show up. Even when nothing was going wrong, the work never stopped. It was slow and quiet and lonely, and sometimes it made her want to scream. She didn't scream. She did what she'd learned to do. She rested. For 2 days, she didn't touch the spreadsheet. Let it sit unopened. Ate what she had. Took walks. Wrote. Slept. Gave herself permission to not optimize. Then on Sunday night, she came back to it. Capital One. Still $3,421. No movement. But she was ready again. She made another $100 payment. Balance, $3,321. This time, she didn't cheer. She just typed it in and whispered, next. She journaled that night. This is the hard part no one talks about. When motivation runs out and all that's left is practice. I'm not doing this for inspiration. I'm doing this for my future. Discipline is quieter than I thought, but it's deeper too. The third week brought a surprise freelance gig. An author needed a fast turnaround for a book draft. $280. She took it, worked late into the night, sipping tea and letting her cat sleep against her legs. When the payment hit, she split it. $180 to Capital One, $100 to her Freedom Fund. Balance, $3,141. The green progress bar had barely moved, but she had. She stuck to her plan, made the minimum every month, plus whatever she could squeeze from side jobs. She cut her grocery bill by meal prepping like a pro. She walked instead of using the bus when the weather held. She made free joy lists in her journal to avoid the temptation of emotional spending. Borrow a new book. Visit the botanical garden. It's free on Thursdays. Rewatch her favorite comfort movie. Take Olive for a stroller walk in her backpack, which made strangers smile. Call her grandma. She learned that joy didn't have to cost anything. Just presence. By September, the balance read $2,821. That meant $750 paid off in 6 weeks. Her utilization was now at 64%. Still not ideal, but out of the red zone. She updated her spreadsheet. Watched the color shift from deep red to dark orange. Not green, but closer. And that was enough to keep going. But then, the 4th week hit harder than expected. A close friend asked her to be part of a weekend trip for someone's birthday. Cabin rental, group dinner, gas split, just $90 total. Erin had the money, but she also had a goal. She stared at her budget for an hour that night. Could she make both happen? Technically, yes. Emotionally, maybe not. She called Elisa. I feel like if I say yes, I'm betraying my progress. But if I say no, I feel like I'm betraying my friends. Elisa was quiet, then said, So what would you tell me to do? Erin sighed. I'd tell you that progress isn't all or nothing, and that it's okay to live. So she said yes to the trip, and pulled $90 from her fund and not from her debt payments. No sabotage, just balance. The trip was lovely. Bonfires, laughter, a long talk with a friend she hadn't really connected with in years. A night under the stars where she whispered into the darkness, I'm proud of myself. No one heard, except her, and that was enough. She returned home refreshed and motivated. She made a $250 payment that week. Balance, $2,571. Utilization, 59%. Orange box, but lighter. She added a new sticky note to her fridge. This isn't fast, but it's real. Then added a drawing of a snail with a cape, because she felt like a slow superhero, and she was okay with that. By mid-September, she was at $2,341. She had 1 month left until her target. It would be close, but she no longer feared the math. She respected it, because this was the climb, and every mountain is conquered one small step at a time. The number didn't move that month. Not up, not down, just sat there, stubborn. Capital One balance, $2,341.44. It blinked on her screen like a taunt. The same amount she'd ended September with. No new payment progress. No celebratory milestone. No green box turning brighter. Just stillness. For a while, Erin stared at the spreadsheet in silence. Then she closed the laptop and walked away. She wasn't failing. She'd paid all her bills, covered rent, kept her emergency fund intact. She hadn't backslid. She hadn't overspent. She hadn't given up. But for the first time since she began her financial recovery, she was standing still. And that scared her, because movement had become her comfort. Progress was her protection. And now, there was no measurable win. Just quiet. For 3 days, Erin avoided the spreadsheet entirely. She focused on work, chatted with clients, took Olive for long walks in her backpack carrier, reorganized her sock drawer, cleaned the fridge. But in the back of her mind, a little voice whispered, You're slipping. You're getting lazy. You're not trying hard enough. It wasn't true. But old shame has a habit of slipping in through the smallest cracks. On the 4th day, she sat at her kitchen table with a blank journal page. She drew a single line across the middle, wrote on one side, What I haven't done, and on the other, What I have done. Under haven't, she wrote. Didn't make a payment toward Capital One this week. Didn't update my budget. Didn't work any extra side gigs. Then she looked at the other side. It took longer to write, but it filled faster. Paid all monthly bills on time. Didn't touch my emergency fund. Made home-cooked meals all week. Read library books instead of shopping online. Gave myself rest without guilt. Didn't panic. Didn't quit. She stared at the second list. Let it speak louder than the first. That night, she sat on the floor, Olive curled up beside her, and reopened her spreadsheet. Still the same number. But her reaction was different now, because she finally realized the plateau wasn't the problem. It was the practice. In the gym, you hit plateaus. In therapy too. Even in recovery. Why should finances be any different? Progress wasn't supposed to be linear. It wasn't supposed to feel good all the time. Sometimes, progress was showing up even when there was nothing flashy to celebrate. Sometimes, progress was staying in place without falling apart. So she added a new section to her spreadsheet. October, plateau month. Underneath, she wrote, This month is about holding, not climbing. Holding is also strength. Then she made a list. All bills paid. White of check mark. Food budget maintained. YW checkmark. No new debt. YW checkmark. Rent covered. YW checkmark. Emergency fund untouched. YW checkmark. Credit score stable. YW checkmark. Mental health stable. YW checkmark. 7 checkmarks. 7 wins. $0 of debt paid. And yet, nothing was lost. That mattered more. She created a sticky note for the fridge. It was simple. Just 2 words. Still standing. She placed it next to the big wins. Because this was a win. A quieter one. But no less earned. The next morning, she woke up early and went for a walk. Crisp fall air. Trees shedding their leaves like they knew when to let go. She walked past the check cashing place where she'd taken her payday loan last year. She paused. Not out of shame. Out of gratitude. Because she wasn't that version of herself anymore. She wasn't clawing her way out of panic. She wasn't hustling from a place of fear. She was managing. Even when it was slow. Even when it was flat. Even when it was boring. That week, she cooked a big batch of lentil soup. Used coupons at the store. Watched her favorite budgeting YouTubers. And felt, oddly, content. Not triumphant. Not excited. Just content. Because financial stability, it turns out, is mostly made of boring days. Boring days where nothing breaks. Boring days where no overdraft happen. Boring days where you make soup and your lights stay on and no one calls to collect. Boring, beautiful days. At her next budget brunch with Elisa, she said, I think I've discovered a weird new thing. What's that? Elisa asked. I'm not in crisis. Elisa blinked. That's huge. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know what to do when there's nothing to fix. Elisa smiled. Maybe you just live. They made coffee. Talked about jobs. Laughed about their old budgeting mistakes. Elisa shared that she'd set up an automatic transfer to her own emergency fund. Erin beamed. That's the plateau working, she said. Elisa tilted her head. Huh, you're not doing big flashy stuff. You're just holding ground. That's the magic. That night, Erin journaled. Plateaus feel like punishment until you realize they're the foundation. I'm not sliding backward. I'm building endurance. She drew a little cartoon of herself, holding a flag labeled "Still Here." Underneath, she wrote, sometimes the bravest thing is to keep going when you're not going anywhere. The next morning, her bank app showed a pending deposit. A late payment from a client. Finally posted. She smiled. Didn't rush to send it to Capital One. She paused, made a cup of tea, then calmly logged in, and paid $100. Because she could. Because the mountain was still there. But so was she. For months, the Freedom Fund had meant one thing. Don't drown. It was her emergency fund, her buffer against chaos, her financial airbag. It protected her when rent was tight, when Olive got sick, when freelance checks came late. It gave her the ability to sleep without the low-grade panic of not knowing if a $200 problem could spiral into a disaster. But one chilly November morning, Erin stared at the account and saw something else. $1,147. She blinked. She hadn't realized it had passed 1,000 again. She'd used it, yes, but she'd also kept refilling it. Quietly. Steadily. Now, it sat there like a tree she hadn't noticed growing. She sat down with her journal and asked herself a question she hadn't dared write until now. What would I save for if I wasn't just trying to stay alive? The silence that followed was massive. Because for so long, survival had been the only goal. Now, for the first time, stability wasn't the ceiling anymore. It was the floor. She took a deep breath and wrote, Freedom Fund 2.0, not just for emergencies. They made a new list. Things that aren't emergencies but still matter. Moving costs if she left the city. A backup laptop for freelance work. Therapy. A solo trip to Oregon she'd dreamed about for years. A new mattress, because hers was older than Olive. Professional development, courses, tools, maybe even a website. Her heart beat faster just writing the words. Because it felt like dreaming with permission. She didn't touch the original $1,000. That was sacred. Still labeled emergency buffer. But now she made sub-accounts like financial seedlings. Oregon Trip Fund. Starting balance, $0. Therapy Fund. Starting balance, $25. Laptop replacement. Starting balance, $10. Move out someday. Starting balance, $5. Small. Symbolic. But that was the point. She was planting for the life after survival. At her next budget brunch with Elisa, She shared the news. I made new funds, she said, grinning. Elisa raised an eyebrow. For what? Erin handed her the list. Elisa scanned it, smiled. This is hope. Erin nodded. Yeah, it kind of is. Elisa paused, then said, You ever think about moving? All the time, Erin said. Not because I hate it here, but because I finally believe I could. They sat in silence for a moment. Not sad silence. Expansive silence. That afternoon, Erin walked to the park and sat under a massive elm tree. She opened her notebook and drew a map. Not of roads, but of goals. In the center, Freedom Fund 2.0, branching out like roots. Flexibility, health, rest, movement, growth, choice. Each branch had a dollar value. Some were just ideas, but they were hers. And for the first time, she felt like the architect of her own future. She made new rules. Freedom Fund 2.0 is for life-giving choices, preventative care, mental, emotional, physical, projects that multiply her freedom, proof that she's allowed to dream. It wasn't about being irresponsible. It was about redefining responsibility. Because responsibility didn't just mean paying bills. It meant making sure she didn't burn out in the process. That week, she transferred $50 into the Oregon Fund. A client had tipped her extra on a rush project. She could have used it toward Capital One, but she knew this tip wasn't about urgency. It was about momentum. So she let herself say yes to her future self. Just once. She updated her spreadsheet with a new tab. Freedom Fund 2.0 Goals. Fund name, current goal notes. Emergency buffer, $1,000, $1,000 sacred. Never touch unless needed. Oregon trip, $50, $850 for next spring. Therapy fund, $50, $600, $75 per session target. Laptop fund, $25, $750 for replacement in 12 months. Move out fund, $15, $1,500 small apartment savings. The numbers were small, but the intent behind them, enormous. She didn't tell many people. Not because it was a secret, but because people didn't always understand. Some might say, shouldn't you focus on debt? Others might say, that trip can wait. But Erin knew the truth now. If you wait until you're completely debt-free to build a life, you might never build it. Because progress doesn't require perfection. It just needs permission. That Sunday, she made a vision board. Old school, scissors, glue stick, magazines from the free box at the library. She cut out a photo of the Oregon coast. A simple room with sunlight and plants. A cozy reading nook. A smiling woman in a therapy session. A sticker that read, "Start before you're ready." She taped it to the back of her closet door. No one would see it but her. But that was enough. Because every time she opened the door, she was reminded, you're not just saving yourself from the past. You're saving towards something, too. By the end of the month, her funds looked like this. Emergency buffer, $1,000. Oregon fund, $135. Therapy fund, $75. Laptop fund, $40. Move-out fund, $22. No huge shifts. But now, every dollar had a direction. And every direction had a story. One night, she sat on the floor, Olive curled up beside her, and whispered, I'm not just trying to be okay anymore. I'm trying to be free. And that changed everything. Erin had spent a year learning how to survive. Then she spent a season learning how to stand still. But now, she was ready to fight. Not out of desperation. Out of clarity. Because the math had been whispering something for months. And now she was finally ready to hear it. Interest is eating you alive. It started when she was updating her Freedom Fund 2.0 spreadsheet one evening and decided to do something she usually avoided. She added up how much she was paying in interest each month. Chase, $5,211 at 25.4%. Capital One, $2,341 at 22.9%. Apple Card, now under 30%, but still accruing at 23.9%. Even with minimum payments and steady progress, she was hemorrhaging over $175 per month just to stand still. That money wasn't buying groceries. It wasn't paying down principal. It wasn't going toward her future. It was going to the banks, to algorithms, to silence. She sat back, tea cooling on the table beside her, and whispered, no more. She opened a new tab in her spreadsheet and titled it, Interest Attack Plan, Goodbye interest. Because she wasn't going to just chip away anymore. She was going to strategize. She reviewed the avalanche versus snowball debate again. She'd started with snowball, smallest balance first. It gave her momentum. Now, she was ready for avalanche. Highest interest first. Even if it took longer. Even if it meant ignoring the smaller wins. Because this time, she was playing for the long game. She listed her cards by APR. Card balance limit APR, min PMT priority. Chase $5,211, $5,200, 25.4%, $150 number 1. Apple Card $417, $1,400, 23.9%, $30 number 2. Capital One $2,341, $4,350, 22.9%, $85 number 3. Her jaw tightened. Chase. That was the one she'd been avoiding. Because the balance was so high. Because it was fully maxed. Because it carried memories of meals she never finished and late-night online purchases she couldn't remember ordering. But now, it was target 0. She made a new note on her fridge. Chase equals chains. Break them. Her goal? Get Chase under 80% utilization in 2 months. Then under 50% by spring. It felt impossible. But so had every milestone before it. So she started. She built her interest attack budget. All freelance income went through a filter. 30% to Freedom Fund 2.0, 20% to Chase, 10% to other debts, 10% to lifestyle, because burnout was real, 30% to essentials. It wasn't perfect, but it gave every dollar a mission. And now, Erin was the general. The first week, she made a $200 payment to Chase. It barely moved the needle, but she took a screenshot of the new balance, $5,011, and wrote in her journal, I'm no longer afraid of this card. I am no longer afraid of the past. I am breaking interest with interest. The second week, she took on extra tutoring hours. A student needed help formatting their thesis. It paid $90. She split it. $60 to Chase. $30 to her therapy fund. Because part of her interest war was emotional, too. That month, she made over $500 in payments to Chase. The balance dropped below $4,800. For the first time in over a year, she updated her tracker. The red bar dipped, barely, but enough to notice. Enough to prove she wasn't powerless. She started tracking her interest saved, too. With each extra payment, the math got better. A $50 payment this week meant $12 less interest next month. Every payment bought her more freedom. Not just time, but emotional bandwidth. The anxiety she used to carry like a backpack, getting lighter, day by day, swipe by swipe. One night, while organizing old mail, she found a Chase letter she'd never opened. She stared at it for a moment. Then, instead of tearing it in frustration, she read it. A balance notice. Nothing threatening. Just numbers. But she folded it neatly and tucked it into her freedom box. Because now, it was part of her origin story. And she wasn't ashamed anymore. At her next budget brunch with Elisa, she shared her avalanche plan. Elisa leaned in. You're really going for Chase? Yeah, Erin said. It's time. You're brave. That card scares me just hearing about it. Erin sipped her coffee. It scared me too. But now I know. There's no debt worse than the one you pretend doesn't exist. That week, she updated her credit monitoring app. The utilization rate on Chase was still bad, but it was improving. Her overall score hadn't changed. Yet, but she knew it would. Because this wasn't guesswork. This was mathematics with a mission. She made another sticky note. Every extra dollar is a declaration. I'm not going back. Then she placed it right above the Chase equals chains note. Because she was stacking victories now, layering them, like armor. That night, Erin sat at her kitchen table with her tea, her spreadsheet, and Olive curled up in her lap. She whispered, I'm not afraid of interest anymore. I'm interested in winning. And she smiled. Not a victory smile. A knowing one. Because now, she wasn't just getting out of debt. She was undoing the cost of delay. For most of her 20s, Erin had lived in a loop. Earn, pay, catch up, repeat. No exit. No detour. Just survival on shuffle. But something had shifted. Not overnight. Not because she'd paid off all her debt or tripled her income. But because her brain had finally asked a forbidden question. What if you didn't have to stay? What if this apartment, this city, this cramped desk life, this hustle for groceries cycle, wasn't forever. What if she could build a way out, not just around? What if she didn't just manage her reality, but redesigned it? It started with a single word at the top of her notebook. Exit. She stared at it for a long time, not out of sadness, but wonder. Because for the first time in her adult life, Erin Thompson wasn't asking, "How do I keep up?" She was asking, "How do I get free?" That night, she made a new savings account, named it Escape Fund, Erin's terms. She smiled, because she didn't know where it would lead, only that she needed it. Not for an emergency, not for a vacation, not for a car repair or vet bill, just for choice. The ability to pivot when the time came. The ability to say no when life said you have to. She started small. $25 from a freelance job. $18 left over from groceries. $10 from canceling a streaming subscription she never used. Soon, the total read $97.34. Not much, but not zero. And zero is the enemy of agency. She added a sticky note to her fridge. This is for the day you wake up and decide, not this anymore. Beneath it, she taped a cutout photo from a thrifted magazine, a tiny cabin near a lake. She didn't know where it was, but it looked like somewhere she'd like to decide to be. She kept her other goals active, still chipped away at Capital One, still maintained her Freedom Fund 2.0. But now there was a third force, one that had nothing to do with fear. Future. At her next budget brunch, Elisa noticed the new line in her spreadsheet. Escape Fund. Erin grinned. Yup. Elisa raised an eyebrow. What are you escaping from? Erin sipped her coffee, then answered, whatever I decide I've outgrown. They toasted to that. Over the next few weeks, Erin funneled every unexpected dollar into the fund. A $45 survey gig. $60 from reselling a desk chair she no longer needed. Even $3.29 in change she found when she cleaned under the couch. Each deposit, no matter how small, felt like a brick in a future she wasn't rushing, but was readying. She made a list titled, What I Might Escape To, a creative sabbatical, a new city, a part-time job that pays less but gives more time, therapy full-time for a season, a writing retreat, a job that doesn't require pretending to be someone else, a life where panic isn't her baseline. It wasn't a list of demands. It was a list of possible freedoms. Then she made another list. What I'm leaving behind. Staying in jobs out of desperation. Accepting burnout as normal. Ignoring dreams because they're not realistic. Letting money dictate her sense of worth. Pretending she didn't care when she actually did. This list felt like fire. Like she named the ghosts. And naming them made them easier to leave behind. By early December, her escape fund hit $352.88. A strange number, but it meant something to her. Because when she researched average one-way train tickets across states, the average was $299, which meant if something ever happened, if she ever had to go, she could. That was power, not a flee, but to choose. She wrote in her journal, I don't know if I'll use this next year or 10 years from now, but every dollar in it whispers, you're not stuck. I used to think I was buried under debt. Now I realize I'm planning my exit. She didn't tell anyone beyond Elisa. Some things were sacred. Some dreams had to grow quietly, protected from skepticism, because people meant well, but their fears were contagious. And Erin had no room left for borrowed fear. One afternoon, while walking through the city, Erin passed a small bookstore she used to visit in college. She ducked inside, just for a moment. Rows of paperbacks, the smell of stories and dust. She didn't buy anything, but she found a quote printed on a postcard and bought just that. It read, You're not too late. You are right on time to become who you needed. She pinned it above her desk, next to a handwritten number, $411.06. Escape fund total as of that morning. And then she did something radical. She gave herself a date, not a deadline, a checkpoint. June 1st. She circled it on a wall calendar. Wrote, Review, is it time? Not time to abandon everything. Not time to act impulsively. Just time to check in. To ask, is this chapter still serving me? And if not, to walk toward the next one. On her terms. Because freedom wasn't a line in the budget anymore. It was a room inside her. And she was building it dollar by dollar. Brick by brick. Choice by choice. Erin didn't check her credit score every day anymore. Not like before. Not like when it used to own her breath, her posture, her pulse. Back then, it was a trigger. Now, it was a temperature check. Nothing more. She'd learned that the number couldn't tell her what really mattered. Like how she made rent this month without scrambling. Or how she paid off $200 more on Capital One. Or how she'd gone 2 months without a financial panic spiral. It couldn't measure discipline. Or resilience. Or how many tears she hadn't cried this month because things, finally, felt steady. Still, one chilly December morning, when the alert popped up, "Your credit score has changed." She felt something stir. Not panic. Not hope. Just curiosity. She made tea. Let the kettle whistle without rushing. Then logged in. The page loaded slower than usual. Olive meowed from across the room. Erin smiled. And then, there it was. "Your new credit score. 654. She blinked. Refreshed the page. Still there. 6, 5, 4. That number had once felt mythic. Like the stuff of other people's lives. People who had parents to co-sign. People who paid their cards in full. People who didn't flinch at every bill. Not girls who'd maxed out 3 cards by 26 and dodged collectors like junk mail. Not girls like her. And yet, here it was. 654. Solidly and fair. Borderline good. Closer than ever to the 700s. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat with it. Let the number rest in her chest. Not like a trophy, but like a mile marker. Something she passed on the way to wherever she was going. She opened her spreadsheet and updated the score. 541, 601, 654. She highlighted the cell in soft green, then added a note beside it. Still not the most impressive number in this document. Because she knew the truth. The most valuable thing on that spreadsheet was the character it took to get there. The nights she budgeted instead of binge-watched. The weekend she worked tutoring sessions instead of collapsing in avoidance. The therapy sessions she saved for. The dinner she skipped, not because she couldn't afford to eat, but because she knew her future self needed more than takeout. She journaled that night. "I used to chase this number like it would save me. Now I know. I saved me. This is just the receipt." She paused, then added, "A high credit score without inner peace is still poverty." And she meant it. Because she'd seen people with 780s who were drowning in lifestyle inflation, who couldn't say no to a vacation because they felt pressure, who bought cars for status and felt trapped by the monthly payments, who had 6 figures of income and 0 figures of freedom. Erin didn't want that. She wanted alignment. She wanted sleep. She wanted quiet confidence, not performative competence. And that was what she was building. Later that week, she did something new. She applied for a credit limit increase on her Apple Card, not because she needed to use more credit, but because her utilization ratio was ready for a boost. The request took less than a minute. Instant approval, plus $800. New limit, $2,200. Just like that, her utilization dropped below 20%. Not from spending less, from playing the game better. She updated her tracker, added a note. The game didn't change. I did. At her next budget brunch, Elisa raised a toast. "To my girl, Erin, the only person I know who can turn spreadsheets into poetry." Erin laughed, cheeks red, but deep down, she felt it. She was different now. Not because of 654, but because of how she'd earned it. Every digit, paid in full with persistence. Every point, backed by sleepless nights, spreadsheets, and a refusal to give up. One night, Erin opened her old notebook. The one from the beginning. Page 1. It was still there. "How to fix this without losing my mind." She traced the words with her finger, closed her eyes, and whispered, "You did." Because this score, it didn't tell the story, but it marked it. It nodded to every late-night payment. Every no that protected a future yes. Every decision that no one clapped for, but she remembered. She made a new sticky note that night. Pale blue, pinned above her desk. It read, "My score doesn't define me, but it reflects me." And she knew it was true. Not the Erin who made mistakes, but the Erin who kept showing up. Even when she didn't feel strong. Even when the wins were microscopic. Even when progress was invisible. She was the proof. And the point. It was a quiet morning in January. No milestone. No crisis. Just stillness. A soft snow had dusted the windowsill. Olive curled asleep on Erin's feet. The kettle hissed gently behind her. Erin stood in the kitchen, watching the steam rise from her mug, and thought, I'm not afraid of money anymore. Not because she had a lot of it, not because she was done, but because for the first time in her adult life, she was in relationship with it. Honest, consistent, sometimes awkward, but always present. And that presence had changed everything. She pulled her laptop out and opened her master spreadsheet. She didn't need to check anything urgent, but she wanted to see it. The whole story. 20 months of numbers, scribbles, milestones, heartbreaks, and little victories that no one clapped for. It was all there. Her credit score graph, gently curving upward like a sunrise. Her savings, split into carefully named goals. Emergency, Oregon, therapy, escape. Her debt tracker, once blood red, now a patchwork of yellow, green, and orange. Progress, visible and deliberate. Every cell wasn't just data. It was memory. Proof that she didn't quit. She clicked in her Capital One tab. Balance, $1,843.22. Still not zero, but down from $3,500 when she started the serious payoff plan. She smiled. That debt used to own her heartbeat. Now it was a puzzle she knew how to solve. She glanced at her escape fund. $622.89. Enough for a one-way ticket, 2 weeks of groceries, or a full month of rent in a cheaper town. It wasn't an exit plan. It was permission. To choose. To leave. To change. To grow. Erin hadn't made the choice yet. But the point was, now she could. She walked to the fridge and looked at all the sticky notes. Some faded. Some curling at the edges. A few smudged with tea or time. Each one had marked a chapter. The first $1,000 is sacred. You were worthy when it was $498. Still standing. Chase equals chains. Break them. My score doesn't define me, but it reflects me. This is for the day you say not this anymore. Erin didn't tear them down. She added a new one, center stage. Bright yellow. This is the end of the beginning. Because that's what it felt like. Not an ending. A crossing. She thought back to the girl she was when this started. The girl who deleted bank alerts before opening them. Who paid $35 for coffee because of an overdraft. Who thought budgeting was a punishment. Who believed that debt was a character flaw. That girl hadn't disappeared. She'd evolved. She'd been scared and stubborn and human. And still, she kept showing up. That girl built this version of Erin. Brick by brick. Dollar by dollar. That afternoon, Erin took a walk. Not to the grocery store. Not to run errands. Just to walk. To move her body in the freedom she had earned. No earbuds. Just the crunch of snow under her boots and the breath in her chest. She passed the old check-cashing storefront again, where once she'd borrowed $300 against her next freelance invoice. She didn't feel shame anymore. She felt distance. Not physical, spiritual. She'd walked a long way from that version of herself, and every step had mattered. At home, she made soup, the kind she used to call end-of-month soup. But this time, it wasn't about scraping by. It was about peace. It was about knowing what she had and choosing how to use it. She set the bowl down, opened her journal, and wrote. What I learned wasn't just how to manage money. I learned how to become the kind of person I could trust with money. She paused, then wrote. I didn't change everything. I just changed direction. And that saved me. Later that night, she drafted a post. Read it, of course. Where it all began. Title. From $498 credit score and panic to $654 in peace. What I'd tell the Erin who started this journey. She didn't write it for applause. She wrote it for the next girl standing at the edge of her finances, wondering if she's broken, lazy, or hopeless. She wrote it for the version of herself who had once believed she would always feel behind. And the post went something like this. You're not broken. You are unpracticed. You are not bad at money. You are just new to seeing it as a tool, not a threat. Every dollar is a chance to choose again. You don't have to be perfect to make progress. And you don't need permission to begin. She hit post and closed the tab. No one called that night. There were no balloons, no trophies, no applause. Just her. A cat. A candle. A life that fit her again. Before bed, she stood in the doorway of her tiny kitchen, looked at the fridge one last time, ran her fingers along each sticky note, then whispered to herself, You did it. Not because everything was finished, but because the hardest part, the beginning, was. And now, she knew how to begin again. Erin's story in How to Escape the Credit Card Trap was never about numbers. It was about self-trust, about power reclaimed one uncomfortable truth at a time, about learning that the opposite of financial chaos isn't wealth, it's clarity. And now she had it, not just in her budget, but in her bones, as many times as it took. Erin didn't pay off all her debt overnight. She didn't go viral. She didn't win the lottery. But she showed up, with $27 in her checking account and a Google sheet full of fear. And day by day, dollar by dollar, she rewrote her story. So if you're standing at the edge of your own budget, wondering if it's too late, it's not. Start with one number, one bill, one moment of truth. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to begin. And when you do, we'll be right here, every Monday, telling stories like Erin's. Stories that remind you that financial freedom isn't just a destination. It's a decision. Hit subscribe. Share this with someone stuck in the same loop. And let us know in the comments. What's your first small step?